Aiden crouched at the corner of the wet street, his heart racing. He hadn't expected to find anything but dirt and trash, but when his fingers touched a leather wallet lying among the debris, something changed. As he opened it, the gleam of money reflected the streetlight and a strange feeling washed over him. $1,000. He could take it all for himself, change his life once and for all, but it was the look of an elderly woman, always there on the streets, that made his hand hesitate. Instead of keeping the fortune, Aiden did something no one expected, and unknowingly, that simple act of kindness would lead him to an unexpected destiny, an invitation to work at a high-level advertising agency. If you also believe that small actions can change lives, leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more stories that inspire and challenge everything you know about overcoming adversity and transformation. The rain was falling lightly but incessantly over the dirty streets of Chicago. The sound of the drops hitting the concrete played like a backdrop that made the city seem more distant, colder, more indifferent. Aiden, 16 years old, walked alone with no clear destination, his dirty, soaked clothes clinging to his thin body. He was tired, but he couldn't stop. The streets, the city that had never welcomed him, were all he knew. His life was a cycle of survival. There was no more hope, no more dreams, only the next night. He wandered the sidewalks of Chicago, not knowing exactly where he was going, but feeling like he had no choice. His stomach rumbled with hunger, but he knew there was nothing he could do. He had learned to ignore those signals because the only thing that mattered was what would happen next. Tomorrow never seemed to change, but maybe, just maybe, something different could happen. Sometimes he allowed himself to dream of something beyond misery, but those thoughts quickly dissipated. There was no room for dreams in a life like his. It was hard even to remember when he lost hope. Maybe it was when his mother left him behind, or when his father never came back. Or maybe it was when he realized no one cared anymore. People looked at him and saw just another street kid, another ghost in the city. All that remained was to keep moving forward. At the corner of State Street, he stopped for a moment, his feet heavy with fatigue, his hands freezing. The silence of the night mixed with the sound of the rain, and the scene was the same as every night. Empty streets, tall buildings, lights blinking on the horizon, indifferent to whoever stood beneath them. Aiden didn't know how long he would stay there, standing, looking at the lights that never touched him. But he felt empty, not just on the outside but inside, as if he were being slowly consumed by a life that despised him. That's when he noticed something that made him stop again, like a beacon of hope shining in the darkness. A piece of paper gleamed under the streetlights. Aiden hesitated, but curiosity drew him closer. He looked around, but the street was deserted. No one was near. He crouched down and picked up the paper, revealing a wallet. It was a black leather wallet with a visible gold logo. His heart pounded. His trembling hands, almost involuntarily, opened the wallet. Inside, there was a significant amount of money. $1,000, maybe more. Aiden stared at the bills with wide eyes as if it were a mirage. He knew $1,000 was enough to change his life. He could buy real food, maybe even find a place to sleep safely. The possibilities stretched before him like an ocean of opportunities. Aiden stood still for a few more seconds, contemplating the money in his hands. The idea of running, disappearing somewhere with all that, was tempting. He could finally leave the streets, escape the cycle of misery he was trapped in. But he couldn't. Something held him back. He remembered the old woman, the one always at the corner of Michigan Avenue, wrapped in a tattered blanket, her eyes sad yet still smiling. She always asked for what he couldn't give. Aiden had never known what to do for her, but he always felt a silent empathy, something that made him want to help her, though he never knew how. He looked at the money once more, his eyes fixed on the bills, and then, without further hesitation, he started walking. He knew that although the money represented a unique opportunity, he couldn't give in to the temptation. Not like this. He didn't know why, but he felt it wasn't meant for him. Something inside him made him realize that things aren't solved by simple material choices. When Aiden reached the corner of Michigan Avenue in the darkness, the old woman was there, just as she always was. Wrapped in her tattered blanket, she stared at the city lights but seemed to see nothing. She looked lost, as if she had been there for a long time, and no longer knew if she was still waiting for something. He approached her slowly, his heart beating hard, and crouched beside her. I don't know what you'll do with this." Aiden said, his voice almost faltering with nervousness. But maybe you need it more than I do. He then handed her the wallet. She looked at him with a surprised expression, but said nothing. Finally, the woman reached out and took the wallet, carefully tucking it under her blanket. Aiden stood up, speechless, and stepped back. He didn't expect a thank you, didn't want anything in return. He just knew that somehow, that moment was important. Something inside him had ignited, and he felt that his life, as lonely and hard as it was being touched by something real. The woman, now with the wallet, looked at him for a brief moment. Her eyes, tired but with a subtle shine of gratitude, met Aiden's. He smiled, a small smile but full of meaning. Then, without saying anything else, he turned and continued on his way. The night remained cold, but the wind felt less biting. Aiden walked through the streets of Chicago, now with a strange feeling. He continued down Michigan Avenue, the sound of his footsteps blending with the rain that still fell, but more softly. He stopped in front of one of the stores, where his reflection appeared in the display window. The street boy he saw no longer looked so lost. What he didn't know was that that simple act of giving, of putting himself in someone else's place, had sparked something inside him that couldn't be extinguished. He walked a few more blocks and unintentionally found himself near an office building. He stopped in front of it and looked at the illuminated signs, reading the names of the companies there. His eyes rested on a golden plaque with elegant lettering that read, Ward & Company Advertising Agency. Aiden didn't know what an advertising agency was. He had never heard of it, had no idea what those words meant. But at that moment, he felt something inexplicable. He stood there staring at the building's entrance, his eyes fixed on the glass door leading to the lobby. He didn't know what it was, but something inside him told him he needed to be there. He shook his head, trying to shake off the thoughts. Maybe it was just the rain, the exhaustion, or maybe the simple desire for life to offer more opportunities. But before he could take another step, a voice came from behind him, cutting through the darkness. "Are you lost, kid?" Aiden turned quickly, the surprise visible on his face. At the building's door stood a man. He wore a dark, well-tailored suit and had a serious, but not threatening expression. Aiden took a step back, feeling the discomfort rising in his body. But the man simply observed him with interest, as if assessing something. "No, sir, I was just looking," Aiden replied, not quite sure what to say. The man smiled slightly and took a step forward. He seemed calm, unbothered by the rain or the night falling. Something in his posture, perhaps the way he seemed completely out of place there, awakened an inexplicable curiosity in Aiden. "I'm Harrison Ward," the man said, extending his hand. "I own this agency. You seem like someone who's looking for something more." Aiden looked at the extended hand, hesitating. He had never had good experiences with strangers, especially people who seemed to be in a very different world from his. But something in him gave way, and he shook the man's hand, unsure of what to expect. "Aiden," he said, almost automatically. "I'm just passing by." Harrison continued to observe him for a moment, as if analyzing his words and perhaps something more. "Aiden, do you know what an advertising agency does?" Aiden shook his head. "No, I don't know what that is." Harrison seemed thoughtful, but then waved off the idea that the boy didn't know. He didn't seem to mind. Instead, he looked toward the building's door and made a gesture with his hand. "I'll be direct with you, Aiden. I saw what you did earlier. The way you helped that lady." Aiden froze for a moment, surprised. He remembered the woman and for a moment felt the weight of the decision he had made. But before he could respond, Harrison continued. "I know you probably don't understand what just happened, but what you did is something rare, something genuine. And because of that, I want to make you an offer." Aiden frowned, not really believing what he was hearing. He had grown up on the streets and knew things were never that simple. But the idea of someone wanting to help him, expecting nothing in return, seemed almost like an impossible dream. "I know you have nothing, that you have nowhere to go, that your options are few, but maybe I can offer you a chance," Harrison said, his words heavy in the air. "A chance to work with me. I run an advertising agency. I could give you an opportunity. I don't know if you have experience, but there's something in you that tells me you can learn. And more importantly, you can teach something I've never learned." Aiden looked at the man, his eyes full of confusion. He didn't know what was happening. How could he, a street boy be considered worthy of such a chance? He knew nothing about advertising, didn't even know what he'd do in an office. What he did know was that those words felt too good to be true. "I don't know what to say," Aiden replied, his voice shaky. He felt small, out of place, as if he were about to miss the opportunity of his life just for not knowing how to accept it. Harrison smiled, not with mockery, but like someone who knew he was offering something valuable. "You don't have to say anything now, but I want you to think about it. I believe in giving opportunities, Aiden, and you made me believe in something more, something I didn't know still existed." Aiden stood in silence, not knowing what to do. Harrison's words echoed in his mind, but he didn't know how to react. He didn't know what that offer meant or how it would change his life, but he felt that somehow he stood at a crossroads of something important. "Think about it," Harrison said before turning and entering the building, leaving Aiden standing there in the rain with the weight of those words still resonating in his head. Aiden spent the next few days thinking about Harrison's words. Every time he closed his eyes, the man's face appeared in his mind, and he saw himself again standing in the rain, in front of that glass door, as if life itself was waiting for him. The idea of a real, genuine opportunity seemed distant, almost impossible. He didn't know what to do with it, but something about the offer made him restless, like he was on the verge of something big, something that could finally change the course of his life. That night, he slept in a cold corner near a subway station, but even with his body exhausted, his mind couldn't rest. He thought about the woman he had helped, the subtle smile she gave him, and the gesture that seemed so simple, yet somehow touched him deeply. He didn't care about the food he lacked or the bed he didn't have. Deep down, he felt that what he needed most was something he had never had, a sense of belonging, and what Harrison offered seemed to fill a gap he didn't even know existed. In the following days, Aiden continued wandering the streets, but now his mind was divided. At every corner he turned, he wondered if he should move forward and accept Harrison's offer. The advertising agency, a place he never imagined himself in where people wore suits and spoke with confidence, felt like a world too far removed. He was just a street kid, with no qualifications, no resources. He didn't even know where to begin, or what he'd do if he actually went. But at the same time, something inside him wanted more than the misery of the streets, more than the constant exhaustion of living without perspective. One afternoon, after another sleepless night and yet another struggle to find something to eat, Aiden made a decision. He got up early and headed toward the building where Harrison worked. Each step felt heavier than the last, but he didn't know how to turn back. Something in his mind urged him forward. It wasn't hunger or the need for a place to sleep. It was something deeper, something calling him toward what he never imagined could be possible. When he reached the building, the doorman recognized Aiden immediately. He looked at the street boy with a surprised expression, but said nothing. Perhaps he was used to seeing unfamiliar faces pass through and never return. Aiden took a deep breath and stepped inside. The building lobby was luxurious, with modern furniture and well-tended plants, all immaculate. He didn't feel like he belonged there, but he kept walking, his footsteps echoing on the polished marble floor. He went up to the floor Harrison had indicated and, standing at the office door, hesitated. What was he doing there? He had no experience, didn't even know how to behave, but somehow he knew he couldn't turn back. He pressed the doorbell. The sound echoed in the hallway's silence, and almost immediately the door opened. "Ah, you came," Harrison said, smiling as if he had already known Aiden would show up. There was no surprise, only calm expectation in his eyes. Aiden didn't know what to say. He looked at Harrison, speechless. The man, sensing his hesitation, motioned for him to come in. "Come in, Aiden, let's talk." Aiden stepped inside, the warmth of the place contrasting with the cold street he had just left behind. He looked around the office, where state-of-the-art computers and neatly arranged papers covered the desks. Harrison sat at his desk and gestured to the chair beside him. Aiden hesitated for a moment before sitting down. He felt out of place but didn't know how to leave. He was there, and now there was no turning back. Harrison looked at him with an understanding smile, as if he knew exactly what was going through Aiden's mind. "I know you're thinking you don't belong here, Aiden. I know the idea of working at an ad agency seems impossible, but let me be clear, it's not about what you know right now. What matters is the way you see the world. I saw it in you from the beginning. The way you look at people, how you understand what they really need. Aiden shifted in his seat, trying to process Harrison's words. He felt a mix of confusion and anxiety, but at the same time there was something in Harrison, something that made him believe he could belong in that world. Something in his eyes conveyed trust, and Aiden, though still unsure, felt that maybe it was possible. Harrison picked up a folder from his desk and opened it. "I'm not asking you to become an advertiser right away. What I want is for you to see how this world works. I'm going to give you an opportunity. But Aiden, understand this. More important than any experience you might have is your heart. You have something that many of my employees don't. A genuine outlook on what really matters." Aiden swallowed hard. He didn't know what to say. It was hard to believe this man was offering something so grand to him. A simple street kid. But the opportunity was right there in front of him, and he couldn't help but think that maybe it was the only chance he'd ever get to leave the place he was in. He took a deep breath, and with effort spoke. "I accept. I don't know what I'll do, but I'll try." Harrison smiled, and for the first time, Aiden felt he wasn't being seen as just another statistic or a lost kid. He was being seen as someone with potential, someone who could make a difference. "I knew you'd say that," Harrison replied, standing up. "Welcome to the team, Aiden. Let's get started." Aiden spent his first days at Harrison's advertising agency in a whirlwind of emotions. Everything was new. Everything felt too big for him. The offices were luxurious with glass walls and modern furniture, a stark contrast to the raw reality of the streets he knew so well. But despite all the novelty and the vastness of the space, Aiden still felt small. He knew nothing about advertising, didn't know how to talk to his colleagues or even what exactly was expected of him. It was a world of professionals who mastered words and marketing strategies, and Aiden felt like he was there by accident, not truly fitting in. At first, he sat in a small chair near Harrison's desk, observing, just listening to the conversations and absorbing everything like a sponge. He knew he wasn't an expert, but something inside him made him realize that his true learning wouldn't come from books or company manuals. He was beginning to understand that what he had to offer was something much simpler, but powerful. The way he saw people, how he listened to them without judgment. Harrison, on the other hand, saw something in Aiden that surprised him more each day. He watched him observe others and began to realize that, despite his lack of experience, the boy had a unique ability to grasp people's emotions, understand their needs, and interpret their unspoken desires. Harrison believed that this was a rare and immensely valuable skill in the world of advertising, where success often depended on understanding what people truly wanted, beyond appearances. Still, Aiden saw himself as an intruder. He was afraid of making mistakes, afraid he wasn't good enough. In every meeting, in every discussion about campaigns and strategies, he felt lost. He didn't know how to speak the language of that world. But what he quickly learned was that, unlike many of his colleagues, he didn't carry the invisible ego that prevented people from seeing beyond themselves. Aiden saw people as they really were, with fears, insecurities, and frustrations. And that perception began to make his presence in the agency more valuable than he had ever imagined. It was on a Monday morning, during an important meeting with a client, that everything began to change. Aiden was sitting quietly, watching as the agency's executives discussed a new advertising campaign. None of it made much sense to him, until the client, a businessman from a large supermarket chain, expressed dissatisfaction. He wanted something that truly connected with his audience, something more human, more genuine. Harrison tried to control the situation, but the client remained inflexible, his demands growing harder to meet. That's when Aiden, silently observing everything, suddenly stood up. He knew it wasn't his place, but something inside him urged him to speak. He didn't know what he would say, but he knew he had to try. What if, instead of trying to sell a product, we show what it represents to people? Aiden's voice was unsteady but firm. Instead of just showing products on shelves, maybe we should show how they impact people's lives. Show how those purchases, those choices carry meaning. The customer isn't just buying products, they're buying a piece of their life, a way to live better. Silence fell across the room. Harrison was stunned. No one had expected Aiden to speak, let alone propose an idea that instantly resonated with the client. The client looked at Aiden with a smile that, for a man used to cold negotiations, seemed almost genuine. "That's interesting," he said thoughtfully. "I like that. Let's explore it." Aiden's idea became the turning point for the campaign. He was included in a deeper creative meeting, helping to shape the direction of the advertising in a way no one had anticipated. It was no longer about products or sales. It was about people's stories and what those purchases meant to them on a human level. In the days that followed, Aiden began to feel more confident, more integrated. He was no longer the lost street kid in the corporate world. He began to understand that his perspective, shaped by survival, hardship, and compassion, was his greatest asset. He had something no one else in the agency did, a deep understanding of people, of what truly connected them. As the client grew more impressed with the results, the agency began to see Aiden's strength as well. He wasn't just an inexperienced intern. He was someone who could move people in a unique way. He was beginning to see what Harrison had seen from the start, that his value didn't come from a formal education or a polished resume, but from his capacity to understand what people really feel. At the end of a long afternoon, Harrison called Aiden into his office. He looked at the boy with a smile that was far from professional. It was the smile of someone who had seen potential where others saw a problem. "You have something rare, Aiden," Harrison said with a sincerity Aiden never imagined hearing from someone like him. "I knew there was something in you, something that can't be taught. You have the power to connect people. That, my friend, is what makes the difference. Keep going. Don't change." Aiden looked at Harrison, unsure how to respond. He felt in some way embarrassed by not knowing what to say, but at the same time a deep sense of gratitude filled him. He was no longer lost. He was learning to see people in a way he never had before. He knew his life was changing, and it was no longer about luck or coincidence. He was beginning to believe that he could truly be more than just a street kid, and that the life he had known, the one of streets and survival, was no longer his place. The weeks at the advertising agency were slowly transforming Aiden, not only into the professional Harrison believed he could become, but also into the young man he had never known himself to be. The confidence that once felt like a distant dream was now beginning to grow inside him, like a seed finally starting to sprout. Aiden knew he wasn't there because of academic merit, and that he didn't have the same technical knowledge as the rest of the team. But he also knew there was something valuable he could offer, a unique worldview that no one else at the agency shared. He didn't need diplomas or years of experience to understand what people needed. He had already lived a whole life being able to see beyond appearances. It was during one of the most important meetings when the agency had to pitch a new campaign for a major supermarket chain that Aiden faced the true test of his transformation. Competitors were presenting sophisticated ideas, filled with charts, complex strategies, and detailed campaigns. But when it was his turn to share his idea, Aiden was nervous, unsure if he could clearly express his vision. He didn't have a PowerPoint presentation or a rehearsed speech. All he had was a simple but powerful insight about people. He stood in front of the crowded room, with every eye on him. His idea wasn't like the others. It was about focusing on what truly matters. Not the products, but the stories of the families, the people who buy and make choices to improve their lives, even in the smallest things. He spoke about moments of connection, about the simple gesture of a customer choosing a product and sharing it with their loved ones, as a reflection of something deeper, of values not visible on the shelves, but clearly present in people's lives. We're not just selling food or products. We're selling moments that connect people. We're selling something that, even in the midst of hardship, makes them feel part of something bigger. Every product has a story to tell. Every customer has a reason to buy. And it's not just about what they buy. It's about what that product represents in their lives. He looked into the eyes of the other team members. Harrison was there, watching him closely. The tension in the room was palpable, but Aiden no longer felt the fear that had once dominated his thoughts. He knew his idea was right. He knew there was something genuine in his perspective. When he finished speaking, silence filled the room. No one seemed ready to react until the client who had been sitting in on the meeting broke the silence. "I like that. Finally, an approach that helps me see the real value behind what we're offering. You're right. It's not just about selling products, it's about connecting with people." Aiden's idea was chosen, and the campaign was launched with a success no one expected, not even him. The advertisement that focused on people and their stories struck a deep emotional chord with customers. The campaign's human and genuine message had a far greater impact than the conventional approaches focused only on products. In the weeks that followed, Aiden found himself more and more integrated into the team. He was no longer just the street kid no one believed belonged there. He had become someone essential to the group, someone who understood the value of humanity, of untold stories, and of the small moments that transform lives. But despite all the achievements and the visible transformation in his life, Aiden wanted to help others like him find the same opportunities he had. He knew that what he had found at the agency wasn't just a professional chance. It was a chance to rebuild his life and the lives of those around him. The agency wasn't just his job now. It had become a launching point to help others change their lives, the same way he had changed his. With that thought in mind, one afternoon Aiden decided to meet with Harrison. He wanted to propose something, to start a non-profit organization that would offer job opportunities to homeless youth, just like he once was. He knew he could use his experience and his new perspective to give others what he had received, a chance to change. Harrison looked at him with a smile that conveyed deep understanding. "I knew you'd come up with this idea, Aiden. I always knew your purpose went beyond ad campaigns. Let's do this. Together." In that moment, Aiden felt for the first time that he was whole. He was no longer the lost boy on the streets of Chicago. He was now someone helping to transform lives, someone who had found his purpose in a world that once seemed to shut every door in his face. And perhaps most importantly, he now knew that his true mission wasn't just to survive. It was to make a positive impact on the lives of others, just as someone had done for him. The future was finally in front of him, and Aiden was no longer afraid of what was coming. He was ready to build something bigger than he had ever imagined. Not alone, but with others, with those he could now help, the same way he had been helped. He knew his life, despite all its hardships, was finally making sense. He had found his true home. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe to the channel. Every click helps spread messages that transform lives. Don't miss the next inspiring stories that will make you rethink what truly matters. Stay tuned now for another emotional story.